Foolish and reckless political leaders set the wrong compass heading, and we lost our way. We became the woke department, but not anymore. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that shit. Removing the distractions. Clearing the way for leaders to be leaders. You might say we're ending the war on warriors. I heard someone wrote a book about that.
A lot of people said this could have been an email. Okay, great. And it actually could not have been an email, because this kind of email doesn't do anything, just like this speech didn't do anything. Email, speech, gathering doesn't matter. A lot of commentary has focused on the reaction of the admirals and the generals in attendance, who seemed stone-faced. If you watch the clip, the very end of the speech, when Hegseth finishes, he says, "We're the War Department." And he kind of looks at everyone, expecting them to like clap, erupt in applause, stand up, cheer. And there's no reaction whatsoever from anyone in attendance. And he kind of looks like he's thoroughly confused by this. But I have a couple of I want 2 points here if I zoom out at a kind of star level looking down. One is, this was the most egregious display of Pete Hegseth being divorced from reality and Donald Trump being divorced from reality that I've seen in a long time. Like, watching him on stage in that blue suit that looks like a Fox News suit, it doesn't look right, and his whimsical socks and his coiffed hair. This guy looked and felt more like a TV man or a car salesman than he did a career military official or officer. Everybody he's looking at in that audience is way more accomplished than him and outranks him in terms of the military. And yet, watching him, Dan, I think that he truly believed this was going to be something that inspired, transformed, revolutionized. I think he thought they were going to hear this and go, finally, yeah, the warrior ethos is unleashed.
The shackles are off. We can finally be the soldiers we've always wanted to be, or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
And you could just see the disconnect. And as I'm watching this, Dan, I'm not a military person. I have people in my family who've served. I have not. My perception of career 2 and 3 and 4-star admirals and generals is that these are very serious people. I may not always agree with all of them on politics, but I don't agree with anyone on politics when it comes to all the time. These are serious people who take their roles very, very, very seriously. There was no way this was going to do anything but feel like paternalism and feel like it was talking down to a group does not take kindly to being talked down to. So that's number one. The second part of this, though, is I want to come back to a mantra that I've had for months since Trump took office, which is they do not want to govern, they want to rule. This was a display of not governing and not leading, but ruling and telling. What do I mean by that? If you take over any organization, if you take over a role as the leader of a nonprofit, if you take over a football team, if you take over a new department in your company, if you become someone who's promoted, or you come from the outside, Dan, you and I used to see this in church life. A pastor comes from outside the church, and there's been congregants at this church for 38 years, and here's the new guy, Dan Miller, and he's got some crazy ideas. If you want to be a leader, what do? You take stock of the climate of the institution, and you go to key stakeholders in that institution, and you try to explain to them your vision. You bring them on board. You try to get them to see what you see so that they will buy in, and the people who listen to them will buy in. What Hegseth could have done, Dan, is tirelessly, endlessly, persistently gone across the globe to the command centers of each and every admiral and general and sat with them to say, here's my vision for a new chapter in the Department of War. Here's what we're going to do. Hegseth's not a leader. Trump's not a leader. They're rulers. They want to rule. They believe Trump believes he's the king, and Hegseth believes he is a knight serving that king. and they believe they have this right by legacy, by divine revelation, by so many things. So they're not leaders. They want to be rulers. And when it comes to this like performance, I think all of us watching were like, this is not how you get serious people to buy into your vision. You have to go and explain. Now, and you can give an ultimatum. You can sit with somebody, explain the vision for the where things are going. And if they don't get on board, if the person just doesn't want to like buy in, then it's like, well, you probably need to leave because I'm in charge. Sorry, it's how it goes. This looked like a car salesman yelling at a bunch of like 4-star generals, thinking that was going to have some kind of imprint on them. And it clearly had zero. I've got more to say. I want to get to the Trump remarks, but you go. What else you got?
Well, so to one of your points, I want to highlight, there was I think I'm getting this from CNN, it was a former senior Pentagon official who served in both the Republican and Democratic administrations, listened to Hegseth's speech, spoke with officials in the room. He described his remarks as, quote, uninspired. And he said it was largely what everyone expected, but still sounded more like what a platoon leader in their early 20s would say to their young enlisted troops.
Exactly.
To your point about the car salesman. And then he said this is a quote. He said, "These guys were captains and majors in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of them wounded with silver stars and purple hearts. And there's this guy, the youngest guy in the room, the most inexperienced guy in the room, with the least amount of combat time in the room, lecturing them." And this was a common response from lots of veterans and veteran general grade and flag grade officers that were basically like, who is this guy to like tell us this? And to your point, I think you're right. Like, it was a power play. Let's bring them all here. We're not going to go around and visit them. We're going to bring them all here. But I think one of the things that I think is true of both Trump and Hegseth, but certainly Hegseth in this, to your point about leadership, is mistaking positional authority for leadership. Yes, and anybody out there who has a boss knows how this works. Anybody who occupies a position where you supervise others, there's positional authority, and people have to do what you say because you're the boss, and like you have to do that. That's not the same as leadership. And effective leaders, even if they are in positions of positional authority, as you're saying, that will try to bring people on board. And I think I don't know that Trump and Hegseth would understand that distinction. I certainly don't think that they would ever do the work of actually bringing people along. But this is what it is. I hold this position, and I think Trump just wants the positional authority, and he'll just decide he's going to crush you if you don't do what he says. Hegseth, I really wonder if he knows the difference. Because you talk about like it looked like the response he was hoping for, that he has mistaken positional authority for leadership. These dudes do not care about you, Pete Hegseth. And guess how many secretaries of defense they have sat through in their military career? Like, you are nothing to them just because you're Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
And that was really apparent. And also reminds me, this is a pattern in the Trump administration. If folks remember back to the first Trump administration, when there was all the talk about, the big tax cuts for corporations, and they were going to put this all back into the thing, they'd hire more people and it would grow the economy and whatever. And I remember like the secretary of, maybe it was Commerce, I forget which person it was, but talking to the room full of CEOs. And he asked for like the show of hands of like, how many people are going to like put this back into hiring more, expanding it? Like, nobody's hands went up because they're like, we're going to buy back our stock and make our boards richer. Our directors are going to get more money out of this. Our investors are going to get more money out of this. This is what we're going to do. And the surprise was sort of staggering when it was like this dogma that this is how this is going to happen. This is an answer that's going to work. I feel like we saw the same thing again and to your point of being out of touch with reality. Who is Hegseth? He is, as we know, he is a Fox News analyst. He has spent his like adult professional life in the echo chamber, hearing that this is what the military wants, inventing these stories of like, I don't know, super weak women who are able to take combat roles and whatever, and confronted with reality, he really has no idea what to do. So I feel like all of that was on display in this. And I think it really ties into that notion of mistaking positional authority for leadership.
Dan, if we just wanted to take away Pete Hegseth's vision for this military, it would be everything you and I have said for 1,000 episodes on this show, which is Christian nationalists want to make this country a straight, white, native-born, patriarchal, heterosexual country. And that increasingly includes people who are able-bodied, like no disabilities, no divergence. So if you just think of what Hegseth talked about here, he railed against women endlessly in this speech. And I don't want my son. Okay.
And if women can't meet the standards, it is what it is. What are you going to do? They just got to leave the military,
And we already talked about it. Most of what he said can be debunked within 10 seconds. If you think about what he's talking about with beards, with facial hair, with other exemptions for religion, what he's saying is I want a military that is Christian. And we've seen him say this in the past. He has said in the past that the military is one of the only institutions on the earth that is pro-God, pro-America, pro-Christian. I mean, he's talked about it in those terms. So you mentioned Sikh, people who are Sikh, and the wearing of the beard as a religious part of their identity and practice, the wearing of the turban or any kind of religious garb that goes on your head. If these standards go into effect, you're looking at those folks basically saying, I'm not going to sign up for the military. I can't. There was also, many of these standards are related to black soldiers who shaving every day causes injury and problems for them into their face. So like these standards have evolved. I am thinking of Japanese, so I want to give everyone just a little history here. Japanese American soldiers serving in World War II were in a segregated unit, one of the segregated units of World War II. And the 442nd 100th Regiment became the most decorated regiment per capita in the history of the military. They lost more men, they got more Purple Hearts, more medals than ever. And one of the things that was true in those cases is that they were not allowed to put B on their uniform, or but most other soldiers were allowed to put things on the uniform that marked their religious identity. So if you had P, it was Protestant, C, Catholic, H, Hebrew, which is for Jewish, X, nothing, no religion. So there were like 90% Buddhists in this combat team, this combat regiment that became the most decorated, Pete Hegseth, okay? And they were not allowed to put B on their uniform, meaning if they died in, right, it would be very hard for people to recognize their religious identity and give them the proper funeral rites, burial rites, and so on and so on and so on. What's the point? The U.S. military is a place where diversity is our strength, because we have people in this country who are Black and Sikh and of Arab descent and Latino descent, people who are East Asian and South Asian, and they all sign up to serve in our military. And one of the basic things they ask is like, hey, I want to serve, and I may die for this country. Can I wear a beard? Because that's what my religion says I need to do. And that's how I interpret my religious practice. Pete Hegseth basically came out with a Christian, fat-shaming, able-bodied, patriarchal, male-only vision for the military, and it was coded as we really like, it's probably whites mainly, whites only, whites mostly, something like that. And a lot of folks pointed out, hey, you're going to weaken the most diverse institution in the United States. And this kind of machismo ethos exists, and it's Putin's Russian army, and that army is getting his ass kicked by a much smaller country, Ukraine, over and over and over and over again. All the bluster does not lead to a more effective military, despite what the Fox News host thinks about all that. So anyway, final thoughts on this before we go to a break.
Hegseth is, you talk about the diversity. I think the issue of women in combat roles is here as well. Like Ash Carter, when they opened the combat roles to women, was like, we're closing these off to half of our population. There was also just a pragmatic component. The military was not able to fill all the slots that it needed to fill. So I mean, there's that. You want to talk about combat readiness? How about like being able to actually recruit enough people to do all the things that need to happen in the military? And you talk about it evolving. He's got his, he can do his stupid pull-up thing with RFK Jr. He can do all that stuff. Everybody knows in the the military has thousands and thousands of people doing lots of different things. Does the person who works in the motor pool, does it matter how many pull-ups they can do in the same way that it does if you're like a frontline combat troop? Probably not. For every comment, I don't even know how the paper pushing, the clerical work, the amount of just administration that the military takes, and all of the people in those offices who, let me be clear, are vital to combat effectiveness and combat readiness and making everything work. Does it matter as much how many push-ups they can do? Some of the fitness standards, to me, I'm like, we live in a world, this is not the 18th or 19th century where people are marching all the time and doing this. I realize it's physically strenuous. My point is he wants to go back to this time with like this sort of vision of an ideal warrior physique. You're like, does that even fit? And it's all under the nomenclature of combat readiness, which has been code for a long time of we want to get the gays out of the military. Now we want to get transgender people out of the military. Women don't belong in the military. People from weird religions don't belong in the military. Everybody who's not straight, white, Christian man has no business being in the military. So we'll couch it under the terms of combat readiness. But what I'm trying to say is combat readiness, I think, means a lot of different things across different parts of the military. And this is what slowly the military has come to realize and to recognize and to make room for. And that's part of what Pete Hegseth wants to unwind. And so just, I guess my takeaway from this is let's not fall for the line that this is somehow about combat readiness. This is not a warrior ethos. This is a white Christian nationalist ethos. That's what this is. And that's what this is about.